The Third Testament, Revelations of Jesus Christ, Chapter 16, The Divine Law, the Law of God. The power of divine law. Thus saith the Lord, there are many men who judge my doctrine out of its time. That is, because their material nature does not allow them to see the eternal aspect of my lessons. My law is unchanging. It is men who, with their cultures, civilizations, and laws, pass, leaving only what the Spirit has built with its works of love and charity. It is the Spirit that, after every day of work and every trial, upon acquiring the Arcane, beholds the unmovable stone of my law and the ever-open book that contains the doctrine of the Spirit. I have poured my light forth over all men, revealing to them the only existing truth. But you see how each man and each people feels, thinks, believes, and interprets it differently. These different ways of thinking that men have given origin to their divisions, since each people or race follows different paths and also nourishes different ideals. The majority have departed from the true illuminated path. They believe that fulfilling the divine law implies sacrifices, denial, and superhuman effort, preferring to create for themselves religions and sects whose rules and practices are easier for them to fulfill, believing that thereby they can calm the need for light and elevation that their spirit feels. Many centuries and eras have passed without humans realizing that fulfilling my law is not a sacrifice for them, but rather that they do sacrifice spirit and flesh in the world by denying my commandments. They have not realized, have not wanted to understand, that who complies with my word must find true happiness and a peace, wisdom, and grandeur that materialized men see in such a different way. The moral and scientific world that surrounds you has been the work of men of material ideas who have sought the material improvement of humanity, and I have permitted them to do their work, to take it to its limits, to know the results and gather their fruits, so that in them they can gather the light of experience. In that light my justice will be manifest, and in that justice will be present my law, which is love. If I agreed to allow you to apply my doctrine to your lives according to your own will rather than mine, truly I tell you that you would never recover from your spiritual stagnation, never allowing your spirit its unfolding, its development, and its perfection. And so, there you have humanity drowsing in its religions, making no move toward the light, because they have not submitted themselves to the order of the divine law, but have tried to force the law to their own will, filling it with myths and errors. It has been necessary for many men of this era to free themselves of all religion in order to seek me with the Spirit, and to be able to develop all those attributes, gifts, and potentials that they feel beating in the innermost part of their being. The commandment of the love of God in the spiritualist work. It is your God who speaks to you. My voice is the law. Today you are hearing it anew without the necessity of inscribing it upon a rock or sending my incarnate word among you. It is my divine voice that reaches your spirit and reveals to it the beginning of an era in which man will be justified, reconciled with his Creator, and purified, as it is written. I gave you the perfect lesson through Jesus. Analyze my passage through the world as a man from birth to death, and you will have an explanation of love in its perfect living form. I do not come to ask you to be equal to Jesus, for in him there was that which you cannot reach, perfection in the form of a man. For in him was God himself in a limited form, but I do tell you that you must imitate him. My eternal law has always spoken to you of that love. I said to you in the first times, love God with all your heart and spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. Later I gave you these inspirations. Love your brothers as the Father has loved you, and love one another. In this time I have told you to love God before all creation, to love God in all that exists, and all that exists in God, that you practice charity, and more charity with your brothers, in order to see the Father in all His splendor, for charity is love. I will not even say to you that this doctrine of spirituality will be a worldwide religion, because I never granted you a religion, but a law. I limit myself to telling you that the law that will triumph on earth, and which will be established in it to illuminate the existence of men, will be the law of love, which I have explained in my doctrine, so that you understand it fully. Mankind will still perform many false deeds of love and charity, until it learns to love and practice true charity, and many will go from religion to religion until their spirit elevates itself in knowledge and reaches an understanding that the only law, the universal and eternal doctrine of the Spirit, is the law of love, which everyone will attain. All the religions will disappear, and only the light of the temple of God will remain, shining within and outside of man, in which everyone will render only one worship of obedience, of love, of faith, and goodwill. The failure to obey the divine commandments and its consequences. On this dawn of commemoration, I ask you, what have you done with the law that I conveyed to mankind through Moses? By chance, were those commandments given only to the generations of that period? Truly, I say to you, that holy seed is not in the hearts of men, for they do not love me, nor do they love one another. They do not honor their parents, nor respect what belongs to others, and on the other hand, they do take each other's lives. They adulterate and cause disgrace upon themselves. Do you not hear falsehood on the lips of everyone? Have you not realized how one people defrauds other people of their peace? And still mankind says it knows my law. What would become of men if they forget my mandates completely? In the second era, having entered Jerusalem, Jesus found that the temple, the place dedicated to prayer and worship, had been converted into a market, and the master, filled with passion, cast out those who had disrespected the temple, saying to them, "My Father's house is not a marketplace." Those who were cast out were less guilty for what they did than those who were responsible for guiding men in the law of God. The priests had converted the temple into a place where ambitions and grandeur reigned, and that kingdom was destroyed. Today, I have not taken a whip to punish those who disrespect my law. I have allowed them to feel the consequences of their own faults, so that they may realize that my law is inflexible and unchangeable. I have pointed out to man the righteous path that he needs to follow. If he departs from it, he exposes himself to the consequences of having broken my righteous law, where my love is manifested. I come to reconstruct my temple, a temple without walls or towers, for it is in the hearts of men. The Tower of Babel still divides humanity, but its foundations shall be destroyed in the hearts of man. Idolatry and religious fanaticism have also raised their high towers, but they are weak and shall fall. Truly, I tell you that my laws, divine and human, are sacred, and they themselves shall judge the world. Humanity does not believe it is idolatrous, but truly, I tell you, it still adores the golden calf. Chaos has returned because virtue does not exist, and where there is no virtue, there can be no truth. It is not that the law which the Father conferred to Moses has no force, nor that the doctrine of Jesus was only applicable to past times. Both of them, in their essences, are eternal laws. Recognize, however, that they are like a fountain from whose waters none are obliged to drink, but that whoever approaches that fountain of love does so through their own will. Interpret my teachings justly. Do not think that my spirit is happy to see your suffering on the earth, or that I come to deprive you of all that is gratifying to you in order to enjoy it myself. I come to make you recognize and respect my laws, because they are worthy of your obedience and respect, and because complying with them will bring you happiness. I taught you to render unto God what is God's, and to Caesar what is Caesar's. But for the men of today there is only Caesar, and to your Lord you have nothing to offer. If you at least gave what was fair to the world, your pains would be less. But the Caesar that you have put before you has dictated absurd laws for you, and has made you slaves and taken your lives from you without giving you anything in compensation. Study how different is my law, which does not tie either the body or the spirit. It merely persuades you with love and guides you with sweetness. It gives you all without interest or selfishness, and rewards all and compensates all along the road. Fulfillment of the supreme commandment. If the Lord said to you, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and spirit, and love thy neighbor as thyself," and if the Master preached the doctrine of love, this spiritual voice that proceeds from the same source now comes to tell you to embrace the law of love, because it has a strength that you will not find even in the greatest armies of the world. Its conquests shall be firm and lasting, for all that you build upon a foundation of love has eternal life. I am showing you the true life of the Spirit, so that you do not live under unjust threats, and so that you do not obey my law only because you fear God's punishment. You have been told about that punishment by those who have not known how to interpret my word. Take my law. It is not complicated nor difficult to understand. Anyone who knows it and guides himself by it will not be confused. Neither does he give room to false words or omens, to erroneous ideas or wrong interpretations. My law is simple. It always indicates the way which you should follow. Trust in me. I am the way which will lead you to the White City, the Promised Land, which has its doors open awaiting your arrival. When will you realize that only by fulfilling my law will you be able to find health, happiness, and life? You acknowledge that in the material life there are principles that one needs to follow in order to survive. However, you have forgotten that there are also important spiritual principles that need to be respected, so that one may enjoy the source of eternal life in the divine kingdom. Remember that only I am your salvation. In times past, present, and yet to come, my law was, is, and will be the road and the guide of your spirit. Blessed shall be those who trust in my law, for they shall never be lost in the crossing of the ways. They shall come to the promised land and give voice to the hymn of triumph. I know that the greater your knowledge of me, the more you will love me. When I tell you to love me, do you know what I truly want to tell you? I am telling you to love truth, to love life, to love enlightenment, to love one another, and to love the true life. I wish that just as I love you, you love one another, and yourselves as well. For I have conceded to you not just a part of the guidance and direction, but rather taking care of yourselves. I have made your first duty with me. You must love yourselves, since you are the living image of your Creator. The mission that I have entrusted to my people on earth is both great and very delicate, and that is why I have sought them out in every era to inspire them with my word and reveal to them something more of the content of the law. The law of love, of good and of justice has been the spiritual inheritance that I have brought in every era. From lesson to lesson, I have led humanity to the understanding that the law can be summarized in one single commandment: love. Love the Father, who is the author of life. Love your brother, who is part of the Father. And love all that the Lord has created and ordered. Love is the cause, the principle, the seed of wisdom, of grandeur, of strength, of elevation, and of life. That is the true road traced by the Creator for the Spirit, so that step by step, and dwelling to dwelling, you continue feeling ever closer to me. If from the beginning of time, mankind had created a cult of spiritual love, instead of falling into idolatrous rites and religious fanaticism, this world, today made into a valley of tears by man's anguish and misery, would be a valley of peace, to which spirits would come to gain merit in order to reach those spiritual dwelling places that a spirit on its road of elevation must enter after this life.